Just for people that might not know, the actual term grindcore was invented by Mickey, the Napalm drummer before last. Yeah, it was his term. It didn't just come out of the ether. Mickey from Napalm Death said, right, he was looking, because Mickey was all about, like mad sayings and stuff, and he said, right, I'm going to call Napalm Death grindcore. It's like, well, Mickey, what does that mean? Well, it could be the fastest, craziest thing in the world, or actually it could be the most painfully slow thing in the world. So all points in between, as long as it's very abrasive, and very, sort of, makes the brain hurt quite a lot. He said that's what grindcore can be. So Mickey came up with it. It's actually a Napalm Death term, if you like.
I did not know that.
So that's what it has no boundaries.
This is an experience of the void.
Hello, viewers, listeners. Welcome to The Void. We have a very special guest today, Barney Greenway of Napalm Death. How are you today?
I'm very well, actually. Yeah, I've just not long got back from my very early morning bike ride, so I'm pretty amped at the moment.
Nice. You're ready for the day?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Well, okay. So you've got a new album. It's really great. It's very interesting. Like it has lots of ideas. I spoke to your producer Ross Russell recently about you guys' makeshift drum kit from Simple Household Items. So was it that kind of an experience?
That and as I understand it, also bits and pieces that they found just scattered around the complex where the studio is. So I don't think they actually bought anything. I think it was all stuff they just found. So, which to my mind is great. That's part of the beauty. That's part of the freedom of music, that anything makes sound. And obviously, some of the really great bands, like a particular inspiration for us, are Einstürzende Neubauten, German.
Yeah. This is the third time I've spoken about them today, which is odd, but they're quite significant.
I mean, I think music can be too conventional, on occasion, and I think it's nice to understand that music fundamentally is a primal art of just anything that makes sound.
I'm all about sound. I got into like Slade and The Sweet, Judas Priest, Sabbath, and then I got into grindcore. And then I started listening to Sonic Youth, The Pixies, and My Bloody Valentine. Nice. And so I like to bring it all together. We're doing a Sonic Youth cover on the Napalm record. We're doing White Cross.
Oh, really?
So we were analysing how they do it, trying to work it out, and it's very different to how they do it and how I hear it. I like the fact that we're pushing the noise boundaries really the way it should always be, really.
What connected you to Napalm Death? Because obviously you were a fan before you joined the band, although you've been in the band for 30 years or something. Is that correct?
Yeah.
31? Yeah.
30 years last year, so.
What first connected you to it? Like, what do you think was so special?
On a number of levels, really. Yeah. I mean, first of all, just on a personal level, they were friends of mine.
Yeah.
And I saw them very, very early on as a three-piece. And to be honest with you, there was a lot of great bands around at that point, but Napalm just kind of stood out for me. There was something special about them that you couldn't quite put your finger on. They had an extra something.
Yeah.
And they just completely blew my mind. I mean, the sonic savagery that they were doing was just at that point was just unmatched.
They were instantly my favourite band, and I thought, well, my dad always didn't understand why I quit my job to actually follow them around, go to the gigs with them, and that's why I quit the job, not even to join the band, just to follow them around.
And not only on the sonic level, what they were saying, their ideas I was completely on board with, because that was myself as a person.
I've been there since almost Scum came out. Should have played and it didn't. Big regret, when I was offered, but I didn't. But
it's okay, life goes on.
So that's the only big regret of me, because that would have silenced all those people like the Pope the Fun. Well, you're not really an original member, are you?
The Scum album was fundamental for me, because I thought it was a milestone, not only in extreme music, but music in general. You know, I think what the band was doing, stepping outside of the band for a second, I think what the band was doing back then was just, to me, was mind blowing. You know, I mean, in what it contributed to music in general. You know, it really turned the notch. You know, turned things up generally. Of speaking a few notches. So yeah, I was very very taken by the band back then. You know, as I explained earlier on.
Yeah.
You know, so that was it really. You know, when I was asked to join, I was actually working in engineering. You know, I had potentially quite a very good job. You know, but you know, I was an apprentice at that point. You know, so I was very young. You know, so I was just like, you know, I thought about it for a little bit, and I was like, you know what, fuck it. Sometimes in life, you've just got to throw caution to the wind. You know? And I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this. It might only last for a few months or a couple of years, perhaps not more than that. You know, but I was just like, you know what, I'm never going to get to do this. Interestingly, for me, with hindsight, if another band would have come along, I probably would have said no. It wasn't that I wanted to, I want to be a musician. It wasn't like that. I wanted to be Napalm Death.
Like looking at like the timeline, you would have only been involved in maybe the last one, but John Peel, who's a huge hero of mine, who's someone who, you know, if you don't know the internet, like is an English BBC journalist who basically spent his entire career introducing really confronting music to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
that's a good way to put it, actually. Yeah.
Like he like eased people into this, and I feel like, you know, doing 3 BBC sessions with Napalm, I mean, that's nuts.
He crossed Napalm over to a whole different audience. His thing was that if he didn't like a band at first, then he thought there was something wrong with him. So he would go back and listen to it. I actually got invited down to his house a couple of years ago to go through his record collection to pick out my favourite, a journey from where I came to get into grindcore, you know.
Amazing. I did want to talk to you about one moment that Russ told me about. You guys were like one of the first extreme bands to be on Glastonbury ever.
Yeah.
And he was saying that when there's all these like hippies, like you had an enormous crowd running around dancing to Nazi punks fuck off. He said everyone in the side of stage was crying. And I was like, because they were so moved by it. What was it like for you? Like, what was this?
Well, it was great. You know, I couldn't say otherwise. You know, I mean, obviously, it potentially could have been a bit contentious because, you know, Napalm playing on a festival, which is basically one of the biggest festivals in the world. You know, for some people that are you sure? You know, but it's like. You know, the thing is, you got to look at the history of Glastonbury a little bit. I mean, it was a hippie festival, you know.
Yeah, totally.
And a lot people spent a lot of time running away from the police, and I know that because I did that. You know what I mean? So, and the punk and the hippie scene was very much interconnected. You know.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. See, that's the thing. There's a common misconception that punks and hippies didn't get on. But perhaps that was a little bit more the case in the you know, the kind of Sex Pistols era.
Yeah.
But once the anarcho sort of movement sort of blossomed, I mean, you got to remember there was quite a hippie ethos. You know, the whole idea of peace, non-confrontation, you know, representation for everybody, not just for the few. Yeah. You know, basically a humane existence. You know, the two were very much.
And anti-capitalist and commercial.
Well, yes, and you know, so that was. I mean, digressing a little bit, but that
I have very focused questions, and we're going down a whole.
Yeah, that was the history of Glastonbury. So you know, and the part that we were playing on was the underground part.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of it actually off the top of my head, but it's a certain part of Glastonbury that's more in tune, you might say, with the origins of the festival. You know.
Oh, that's cool.
So they were great. The people that actually when I turned up to the festival, there was a couple of people that I'd known from the punk scene in the Southwest, like for 20 years, 30 years ago. You know. So it was great. I mean, I've got nothing bad to say about it. It was a brilliant experience for us. I think not only did we kind of clean out some ears, sonically. But I think, equally as importantly, the ideas, were out there for all to see. So I think you could say mission accomplished.
Yeah. How are you kind of seeing the world? Like, what's the story that you're trying to tell on this?
One of the things about Napalm is, in my opinion, that it needs to be lyrically, ideas-wise, it needs to be contemporary. Because I think if you just make generic points on albums, likely I'll be on board with them. Most people would, but it doesn't have the same effect unless there's something in there that translates to the world that people are living in, even if it's directly in their own universe, what surrounds them. In the wider world, they connect with it better if there's reference points, So with the new album, I wanted to talk about and expose like dehumanization and marginalization of peoples, because that concept is nothing new, but it's been accelerated in the last few years because I mean, to give you a couple of examples. So I think that the whole thing around refugees, that the fact that the way they're treated, the way they're perceived, the language that's used about refugees, again, it's nothing new, but we now have governments around the world who are using that language to, first of all, solidify their own position, their own power, and secondly, they're almost trying to formulate policies, based on this stuff. So you can look at, particularly around a couple of governments in Europe, and you can read very anti-refugee measures. So I mean, the fact that these people are just fellow human beings, and they're actually trying to achieve a bit of dignity in their lives given their situations, which why shouldn't it be that everybody can have that? Dignity is not reserved for the small percentage of people in this earth in certain positions, so that's for one thing. So the other example that I use is LGBTQ plus people, who have a history of being marginalised and dehumanised, but it's gone a stage further. It's gone a stage further in Europe, that we have governments that again, use the language of well, in a couple of ways, really. First of all, there is a couple of countries in Central and Southern Europe that proudly trumpet the fact that they supposedly have gay-free zones, in their countries. Yeah, I'm serious. And they also tend to suggest that your biology, your makeup as a LGBTQ plus people somehow has the potential to pollute the biology of the rest of the population. So it's kind of this almost like a eugenics kind of leaning thing.
Yeah,
and I would suggest that this is very serious stuff, because which is why I felt the need to expose it, because you got to remember this: we had situations in the 1930s in Europe where very charismatic people used these kinds of tactics to again solidify their power, that became dictatorships, and basically the language they were using against already marginalized peoples in the end led to mass murder. So this is serious stuff, and people do say to me, on occasion, well, you're overreacting, because that was the 1930s and this is, it's like, look, man, things in life happen, and there are always possibilities from. I'm not suggesting we are at that point yet, of course not, but the very fact that the same tactics are being used is a very bad, in terms of just basic humanity. So pretty much every song on the album is about that, more or less, with one or two exceptions, the ones that I didn't write,
So to me, it's not necessarily political, even though
it's a bad word, because what is that anyway?
To me it is a human thing. That's what it is. It's part of being a human being. It's something that I keep banging the drum about, but I think half the reason why the world has been such a fucking mess for centuries, this is not nothing new, this is going back many centuries, is because people have forgotten, I think, what it is to be a human being. They don't know what humanity is. They don't understand that you don't have to treat people in really heinous ways, and but the problem is that the temptation of power and control makes people do some really heinous things, and I try and completely smash that, for at least for what small amount I can do,
If humanity and the sustainability of the human race actually means anything to people, we just have to stop treating other people like this. This is just not,
and the planet.
It's not the way forward. And the planet, and
don't have
other
a choice.
beings.
It's gonna get like choice. It's gonna get raw. It's gonna get pretty real in our lifetimes, almost guaranteed. I like extreme music. I like fast music. I like the density, but I do like the swingier songs on this album too. I did. Yeah, Amoral goes perfectly with the Jackrabbit Slims dance contest scene from Pulp Fiction. I can prove this.
Yeah.
What's the story of that song in particular?
So Shane, that's like Shane's music and Shane's lyrics as well.
Really?
So
Sorry.
It's very Killing Joke. The actual.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Itself. For me, what Amoral was about was the thing that human beings spend so much time competing against each other in very, very spiteful ways,
Yeah.
And in the end, it's futile because we only have a finite time on this earth,
Yes.
And as I like the line that Shane wrote in the lyrics, it says, "In the end, we're just food for the worms, shit of the earth." And that's what we are, because we are a waste product, that just goes back to the earth. So I guess the conclusion is, while you're on this earth, actually try and like move it forward, do your bit to actually live with other human beings, and not work against them.
Okay, Throes of Joy in the Jaws of Defeat. What?
Defeatism.
Great defeatism. It's a great name.
Yeah.
What
I know it's a mouthful.
It's pretty. It took me a second to because it's two ideas. It's Throes of Joy and Jaws of Defeatism.
It's an oxymoron.
Yeah,
it's a positive and a negative. And I like that because I'm a language nerd. I love the art of expression. So I always try and use wordplay. Irony, pathos. Humor, which is very difficult to do, actually, dark humor with very serious subjects, and I still haven't quite achieved that.
It's the best when it's done well. It's the best when it's and it's.
But
really
I try to use the art of language. I mean, I'm not trying to be dismissive of other bands, other people, other writers, but I do think sometimes music in general is very guilty of just that'll do kind of mentality, like generic forms of expression that have been done a million times, you know, and it's just like, oh God, couldn't you have stepped back and thought about that a little bit, you know?
It does a disservice to the music as a whole when there's so much stuff that's quite formulaic and boring. And it's like, if people are exposed to this and this is their first approach to it and they're like, oh, this isn't really going all the way. Like, this isn't, it can get very formulaic and it is a problem. And I think Napalm Death haven't done that.
Yeah, I hate to be dismissive of other people's art, you know, because obviously it's their art, you know, but it's like, you know, it's not something that I always think very deeply, you know, about the stuff that I do. And if I read something back and it just doesn't seem like what it could be, I'll just scrap it and start again. I'm certainly not afraid to do that. You know, you've got
a great line. Can this pustule on the colony be dashed to smithereens? That's some solid wordplay.
Yeah, it's a little bit complex, and you know, when sometimes when people read that's
it's piratey. Smithereens is piratey language. It is.
Yeah, well,
that's a technical term, Barney. I don't expect.
Well, think about it. I mean, it's an expression of how violently people think about other people that have done nothing to them, you know. I mean, a pustule obviously is it's like a pus-filled lesion, you know, a boil. Yeah, exactly. So think about that language. If you really think that way about somebody, I mean, that's just in terms of like the value of humanity. That's just I think needs a bit of a reset, you know.
Well, yeah, well, this hate, this virulent hate, and it, you know, and I try, I don't know if you do, but I try and understand where it's coming from. I always think it's best to look deeper. Where is this anger coming from? It's like, it's a very slight side note, which is a big issue. It's like, well, you look at domestic violence. It's like, well, where is this coming from? What is wrong? What is the lead up to this? Why are men feeling the need to, you know, a third of women in the world experience sexual violence? Why is this happening? How are men being treated? And it's like the anti-refugee and anti-gay stuff. It's all the same premise. Why would you have the need to hate these people because they're different or and when corporate, and it's like, I feel like people like Stephen Miller, who is the architect of some of the most disgusting vitriol that comes out of the White House. He is the ultimate anti-immigration, absolute piece of shit monster. Absolute, like, I think he's one of the worst things that ever happened to the world. But this whole narrative of you're poor, you don't have healthcare, you don't have basic needs, your needs met because of brown and black people, when it's the people who aren't paying you, when it's your elected, you know, it's like, it's just mind-blowing that they're doing this scapegoating. And you talk about scapegoating a lot in this.
Yeah, scapegoating's always been a common theme on Napalm.
Yeah,
albums, actually.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, I had to get that out.
No, but like the stuff that you said back there. I mean, a lot of this stuff's a power play.
Absolutely.
In life, because we've been conditioned to. In society has a lot to blame for this, actually.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the hierarchical structures of society. People always, I mean, there is a common theme that society's so great and it should be protected, you know, at all costs. Well, the results of that hierarchy are not so great, you know, and I would suggest maybe it's an idea at some point in the future that the whole thing, we just hit the reset button, so to speak.
I wanted to talk to you about that, because I think, and it's like when my, you know, far left friends talk about how great communism is. I'm like, do you want to go speak to people of China about how fucking great communism is?
Yeah.
I don't think there's a 20th century ism that is worth importing into the 21st century.
Sure. Well, I mean, on that subject, actually, there's a couple of things to say about it. So, you know what, there hasn't actually ever been, in terms of if you study the actual fundamentals of communism, you know, it actually has nothing to do with the systems that we've seen, you know, around the world thus far, because, you know, well, for starters, I would consider the Soviet Union and the Chinese system and the North Korean system and whichever else claims to be communist as state capitalist systems, because you have an elite band of people at the top, right, who, let's be honest, it would seem really generate for themselves an absurd amount of wealth, you know, and 100%. then you have very different levels of access as you go down the scale. So that is not an egalitarian system, I would suggest, you know, by any stretch, you know. And I don't care, you know, for me, I am a person that comes from the left, you know, but I also I also consider myself apolitical in some respects, because
I believe in right versus wrong versus right versus left.
Oh, see, I don't even think of that, you know. I think that if politics isn't contributing to the equalizing of all peoples worldwide, then I think it starts to become meaningless, you know, whichever slant you put on it. And so, you know, I am from the left, but I am not going to be an apologist for any regime that kills people, that subjugates people, because for me, being from the left, one of the fundamental ideas of that was freedom. Was this humanity that we speak about, you know. And let's not forget, you know, that in the Soviet Union there was rampant anti-Semitism, and there was the murder of Jews also occurred in the Soviet Union. So are people going to kind of brush that to one side? I would suggest I don't think we can ever hear it. Like, we should not ever like deify any of these things as an answer, because we're 8 billion. I feel like we're not in the same world that existed in the 20th century. Like, 8 billion people on this planet, on this trajectory,
Like,
Yeah.
you know, and I don't know, what do you think? Like, I kind of feel like there's going to have to be a horrible, I mean, maybe the pandemic is it, but maybe a climate emergency that's going to make us go, holy shit, this stuff doesn't matter. You know?
Well, you know, I'm hoping so, but it might be too late, you know, once people actually realise, because that's the other thing as well. You know, people can be dismissive about the climate emergency, and it is an emergency. I don't think that's overstated, you know, that term.
We're the frog in the pot.
Here's the thing. Yeah, what people aren't recognising, that not only will it be very damaging in terms of the sustainability of species on this earth, but it will also create conflict. You know, because those zones where the environmental problems, you know, kind of really undermine the quality of life. You know, there's going to be conflict to establish for people to establish themselves in the more habitable zones. Although how long those will last for, who knows? You know,
I've thought, and then who's the new refugees? What if Texas becomes completely unlivable and they're going to Mexico, and Mexico are like, hey man, you want a wall? Sorry.
Yeah, well, don't forget the Gulf Coast. The Gulf Coast of the States is subject to tidal, you know, very extreme tidal pressures right now. They're going to lose a lot of land there over the next, you know, in times to come, very soon. Well, you know, I think
it's important to talk about these things, and I was thinking about like being of service, because I think that's where you find the most thing, and how music fits into this. And our governments would give us all the impression that music and the arts are not valuable because they have not really tried to help them at this time at all. But the truth is, the arts is something that I think has gotten a lot of people through it, and doing what you do is being of service in an interesting way. Like, I was really pissed off the other day and felt quite soothed by the ideas expressed and the complexity. And I was like, how do you see your band and what you do as being of service to people?
We are a small cog, you know, in a machine, which is probably not the best term, but we're a small cog in a machine of like-minded people who are trying to make a difference. You know, that's what we are. You know, Napalm Death is not on a pedestal. You know, we're not exclusively the saviors of anything. We're not. You know, but our efforts in trying to achieve something, we'll just try to do our very best, you know, our absolute very best, you know. And I know that's quite simply put, but that's really it, you know what I mean?
But it's interesting, what you were saying, when we spoke before, and another time, we're talking about the problem isn't individuals, it's systems, and it's like the solution isn't individuals, it's systems. And Grindcore, for example, I think is a system. And I know, I wanted to kind of ask you what you kind of see that is right now, but just a brief side note. I think Curby, who does the Obscene Extreme Festival, which is, as you would know, but for the viewers out there. Yeah, I know
Curby very well,
a pure grindcore festival in the Czech Republic, no sponsors, 100% vegan. Like, that is the happiest man I've ever met in my life. He came down to the last Blood Duster shows, and he
has an absolutely absurd taste in footwear as well.
I was just like, for the man who does the loudest, grindiest, most ridiculous festival in the world, he is the happiest person I've ever met.
Grindcore talks a lot about like, you know, social things and about all the important. It's a huge anti-Nazi movement, which is great. You know, animal rights movement, like human rights all together. The community is such a great that if you turn into normal community, you are just like, what the fuck these assholes are all about? You know, like, you know, always talking about money, blah blah blah, this, that, new iPhones, blah. You know, it's bullshit.
So how do you see, what does grindcore mean in your idea and extreme music?
Well, so just for people that might not know, the actual term grindcore was invented by Mickey, the Napalm drummer before last. Yeah, it was his term. It didn't just come out of the ether. Mickey from Napalm Death said, right, he was looking, because Mickey was all about, you know, like mad sayings and stuff, you know, and he said, right, I'm going to call Napalm Death grindcore. It's like, well, Mickey, what does that mean? Well, it could be the fastest, craziest thing in the world, or actually it could be the most painfully slow thing in the world. So all points in between, as long as it's very abrasive, you know, and very, you know, sort of, you know, makes the brain hurt quite a lot. He said that's what grindcore can be. So Mickey came up with it. You know, it's actually a Napalm Death term, if you like. You know,
I did not know that.
So that's what it has no boundaries, you know, to me, you know. I mean, of course, as it's been co-opted into a lot of things, there are some grindcore fundamentalists who say, right, it should only ever be fast drums and fast metallic guitars or fast hardcore punk guitars. It's like, no, you know, for us, it's like, well, no, you know, as you know, we find many things on the sonic spectrum, and we're going to explore those things.
And
if you don't want to call that,
sorry.
And if you don't want to call that grindcore, that's your choice, you know, not a problem, you know, but we're just going to do what we think's appropriate, you know. So.
And we did invent the word, so, you know, you can say that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but it's like, again, it's not ours to keep, you know, the scene has grown and it's gone many different directions, and it's not for Napalm Death to dictate how that goes, you know. No. Nor are we're not these kings sitting at the top of the grindcore tree, you know, not at all, you know. We're just
sorry,
go on.
Sorry, no, I got it.
We're just a part of it, you know. We just we were instrumental along with other bands in the early days, but we are just a part of it, you know. We're not sort of the grand inquisitors, you know, in this thing. We're not, you know. So.
Which is good, because I think, and that's what I like, that it does share a lot more with punk rock than that old school, like godlike thing with like old classic rock that came before it, where it was very much a big distance. And I think it's funny, like talking to you, you remind me of people I grew up with in like the free party scene in Sydney. Like it was electronic music, and it was punk bands, and it was everyone getting together. And there was so many women taking a leadership role in it that I was really moved by. But I can tell you come from that school of thought, which is like making our own world around us that doesn't rely on their values, I guess.
I mean, I don't think it's even a case of our values versus somebody else's values. You know, it's just a case that, you know, I'm not a hero type person. I don't find that to be constructive to me. Yeah, there's a lot of people who've done things that I have deep admiration for, but I don't adopt heroes in my life really at all. You know, because I think that once you do that, a complacency sets in, you know, and you actually lose focus. You know, you know, it's more important for me. And from my opinion of Napalm, to keep our eye on the ball, to keep being imaginative, because we feel that we can offer that, you know, in terms of our gigs and our albums. And that's the thing. All the kind of potential iconic connotations, it just doesn't interest me. It just doesn't do anything for me, you know. So
it's a recipe for mediocrity if you started.
But having said all that, you know, people say a lot of really kind things about the bands, and I do appreciate it. You know, you've
got a great fan base. Yeah, because they can recognize real. I think you can't hide who you are from a record. You can't really hide it. And I mean, as a wordsmith, I'm curious, and this is, I guess,
wordsmith.
That is what you do. That's
sure, I suppose.
Are there writers or particular phrases or anything that you've sort of thought were quite great?
Okay. Sorry.
That's okay.
So, Steve Ignorant from Crass. Yeah. Although, you know, other people contributed to the lyrics of that band, I'm sure. You know, Jello Biafra. You know, Colin Jerwood from Conflict, you know, and then also bands like Joy Division, you know, Ian Curtis, Swans, you know, so Michael Gyra.
He's so good. I could get him to read the phone book. I could just listen to that.
Yeah, exactly. And then even stuff like Gang of Four, you know, old UK
Andy Gill's
band,
awesome.
you know, the guy. Yeah. And also Tom G. Warrior from Celtic Frost, you know.
Really?
Yeah. Because I just think his whole his whole it's not stereotypical heavy metal stuff that he writes. You know, if you really study his lyrics, you know, yeah, it might be sort of shrouded in the kind of sort of a cultish feel, but if you actually drill down a little bit, it's very poignant, the stuff that he writes. You know, and it has it's a lot of it's metaphorical, you know, for real stuff that's going on around us. So I think he's another really great lyricist, you know.
There is some real shit going on around us.
Yeah.
What would there is some Swansea stuff on this record. That Belly Full of Salt and Spleen, I think, is hella Swansea. Was that a conscious effort to
it was. Well, it was. Yeah, well, part of it, an element of it, definitely. But there's also other things going on there. Ambient, just pure ambient music, you know, very, there's actually some very gentle guitars going on in that. Okay, it's buried in a big pile of nastiness, you know, but so there's all kinds of things going on in there. You know, Michael Gyra, you know, a band called Play Dead, who was an old kind of avant-garde sort of goth band who were big for me. I haven't mentioned them. They've just come to mind. I haven't mentioned them in interviews thus far, but, you know, also them. Again, Einstein and Neubauten for the drum, you know, the homemade drum kit and all the various things.
That was so good.
There's a raft of different things, you know.
It's exciting to have your ears assaulted with fresh ideas. What do you want to contribute at this point? What do you want your ideas
overall? Musically, we just want to do the best that we can and hope that it sticks. We want it to be challenging without losing the fundamentals of what we want to do, which is fast, furious, chaotic music. You know, we want to expand on that. You know, ideas wise, I want to put the ideas on the table. I don't expect people, I don't demand that people take everything on board and use it as a springboard for their lives. Even if people just consider it and then push it aside, not a problem. You know what? If people only come in for the music, I don't have a problem with that. You know, it's not for me. It's not for me to dictate how people come into music, you know, because music is one of the last outposts of freedom that we have. There are no barriers to listening to it. Anybody can come into it, you know, and I don't want to start waving a big stick, you know, over the top of
the last outpost of freedom is a pretty good name for something. I'm just saying you should definitely keep that.
My thing is the music, you know, and the sounds of the sonics, you know. So that's how we kind of balance, I think.
I can try to oppose the things in the world that I believe are harmful to the, you know, the longer term prospects of humanity. But in terms on an individual basis, you know, it's not for me to tell him what he should think. You know,
it's good. Yeah. Well, and
he can formulate his own ideas. I mean, I'm grateful to him for giving me the groundwork of what I operate on, because without the things that he does, I wouldn't have that layer to put my stuff on top of. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and there's a lot of ideas between you. There's so many ideas that it comes from a cerebral intellectual level. There's a lot like going on. What would we be surprised about your musical relationship and how things kind of come into it?
Well, the thing is, just going back to the previous, just because I didn't finish my point.
Sorry.
Is that you, like, bands are social experiments. They are, you know, you spend so much time in steel tubes with other people in bands, you know. It's like it's a social experiment, you know.
And a marriage.
It's just it's a microcosm of what's out there in the wider world, you know, no more, no less, you know. So you're never going to get 3 or 4 people or 5 people that agree completely in parallel with everything. Sure, you know, Napalm Death has a basis of what we, you know, what we speak about, but we do sort of diverge at different points, and there's nothing wrong with that, you know. It's not, if everybody in life was all the same, you know, it'd be fucking dull world, you know.
Well, yeah, and people surround themselves with these echo chambers. I think it's good to
So
yeah.
So what was your point after that? Sorry.
So what would we be surprised about with your relationship with Shane? What do you think? Is quite unique.
I mean, you know, we've been together a long time now. We have our down days, we have our up days, you know, and it's really that simple.
Yeah.
You know, we as I think it would be fair to say, as time has gone on, You know, we're not perhaps as close as what we were in terms of the way we operate, you know.
Yeah.
But that's just a fact of life, you know. That's just
getting older as well.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that, you know. I wouldn't suggest age dictates anything. You can do anything whatever age you are, you know. You can, age is not. I just think with experience, would I say, of the life that's around us, you know, we've maybe the gap has widened a little bit, but that's not. I'm not saying that in a negative sense.
No,
you know, that's just part of life. You know?
Well, totally. It's okay. What makes you feel the most joyful, and what makes you feel the most defeated, and are they connected?
So the most joyful, I guess, is the simpler things in life. You know, I live very simply as a person. You know, I love the fact that I can cycle out of my house for 2 minutes and I'm on a beach path, you know, and I look at the beach every day in the worst fucking coastal storms that you can imagine, or the sunniest days that you can ever imagine. And that to me is the peak of life. You know, just to see the sea and the beach and the seagulls and life going on, you know, in very natural ways. It just, to me, that's the pinnacle, you know, of things. That gives me excitement to be joyful, you know. There are many things in life that get so complicated that become not very joyful. And those basic pleasures in life, we so forget about them sometimes, you know. And I don't want to, for myself, I don't want to forget about that stuff, you know. I want it to be at the forefront of my mind, you know.
And their needs to be connected to the earth. Like, I think needs, and when we ignore them, that's contributes to the dehumanizing you're talking about. Like,
I mean, what makes me defeatist?
Yeah,
you know what? I think it would take me a long time to sit here and give you something, because I look at the worst situations in the world and it doesn't defeat me. I always look at ways around it. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I always try. Yeah. I'm not. I mean, like, for example, what you were talking about earlier, sexual violence about women. I don't feel defeatist about that. What I actually feel is I'm looking into the future to see how these things can be completely alleviated. You know,
I'm really hopeful that's the case, because at the moment I just feel a lot of pain for women who don't have the opportunity to leave.
Yeah, for sure. You can feel the pain.
We're so lucky. Like, there is, you know, as you say, there's so much to be joyful about. We are so lucky living in where we are, being able to do what we want to do. And, you know, like, I don't ever forget that. I think you're right.
Yeah.
So you're fundamentally an optimist.
Yeah. I mean, when you say defeatist, that suggests to me in a large part of giving up.
Yeah.
You know, I think if you give up, the status quo is preserved, and then you've lost everything, you know. So that was, I guess, what I was trying to say in a roundabout way, you know.
Yeah. What, outside of music, what are the historical figures that have had the most impact on you? Oh, wait, I know you have to go. Last question.
Yeah. I would say it's hard for me to come up with too many. I would say actually somebody like, I'll give you one person. You know, I think it's an obvious. I'll give you two. I think it's an obvious one, but I think the struggles that he went through, selfless, Nelson Mandela, you know, for one thing. I think also Victor Jara, who was the Chilean folk musician who stood up against Pinochet, you know, and you know, even when he was taken to the National Stadium, tortured and murdered, you know, he would not relent. You know, he stood up for humanity and the good of people, you know. So there is a couple of people. I could come up with more throughout history, you know, like selfless people who actually lived for humanity, you know. But it's hard. I can't right now off the bat. I can't really think, you know.
It's pretty great. It's good to know that you feel so, you know, we shouldn't be defeated.
No, because then if defeatism is, as it says, feeling defeated, giving up. Yeah. And I think, because when you're defeated, you have conceded, you know. And I'm not talking about that in terms of like fisticuffs and nothing like that. I'm talking about, we have to keep moving forward with the ideas that will make life better for everyone, not just a few people, everybody, you know.
Yeah.
This is an experience of the void.
Thank you for watching the whole video. It's really great to see you at the end. You came all the way through with me to the end. If you've enjoyed the content today and you'd like to catch more of it forever, make more of it happen, I would very much appreciate you subscribing. Also, there are many more videos here and here.